Hi everybody, thank you for having me here. I must say, recently I had the privilege of listening to another colleague of mine talk about his academic journey in surgery, and I learned a lot, and it really made me appreciate that it is not easy what we all do every day, and the more we share our stories, the more we learn how we can improve things so the next generation can have it a little bit easier. So with that said, this is a little bit about my background. We migrated to Australia when I was in year 8. I'm heavily influenced by my maternal grandmother, who would have made an excellent doctor, but she was brought up in India at a time where the country was going through independence and partition and ending up as refugees in their own country. So she didn't have the opportunities in the education that I've had the privilege of. My paternal grandfather, on the other hand, was a freedom fighter, so I've got these two big themes in my past through either side of my family. One is to really appreciate education and not take opportunities for granted, and the other is also to raise your voice against areas where there's social injustice. And my parents, having gone through similar turbulence in their education, it really has driven home that no matter what hats I wear in life, there's always two things that are really strong. I'm a perpetual student, so currently doing a PhD, and also that I am really drawn towards areas of advocacy. So just a little bit about how I got here. Up to about my fellowship, everything was, done as per method. Finished your exams at first go and all of that. But it was really after I finished my fellowship that I started to do things a little bit different, and very much felt like that lonely man walking down the road because of a few things. I had a love for research, and at the time in New South Wales, in my subspecialty, there wasn't a big culture of research. People certainly thought that you'd only do research if you didn't have enough operating to do. To make things worse, I was one of a few females, and as if that wasn't a write-off enough in terms of professional progression, I was also a single parent. So all of those combined meant that, it's funny, I can laugh about it now, I wasn't laughing about it then. All of those combined with a culture of bullying at the time, which was, an elephant in the room, just meant that I found myself quite alone. But there was a critical decision I had to make at that time, which was about going away on a fellowship and not wanting to not wanting to compromise on my responsibilities as a mum, and also on my passion for being well trained. Under great difficulty, I did go away to the UK for a year. And by the time I came back, I had faith in my training, and no one was going to tell me I couldn't follow my passions in my profession because of my gender. So that's all well and fine. That was in my head, but how do you get started? So I sought out some mentors, some academic mentors, clinical mentors, and also scientific mentors. And also it was quite fortuitous that at the same time there was a real change in culture of research. The IIS was just coming about, and I certainly put my hand up. I didn't need funding. I was just happy to have some guidance, some mentorship. And also there was a large, really dramatic change in the culture of bullying in surgery with the RACS-EAG. And I decided that rather than sort of being one with struggling with problems, that I'd put my hand up and do something, be part of the solution. So I put my hand up and got elected to the RACS New South Wales subcommittee, of which I'm still a part of. At the same time, thanks to another woman named Barbara Williams, who set up a foundation called the Gunnar and Rodney Williams Memorial Foundation, which funds a lot of ENT research all throughout Australia. I was able to apply for some grants, and really fortunate for having funding, which also gave some credibility to the research that I was doing, which in a culture where research is not, at the time, where research was not such a attractive thing to pursue, really did help. The other thing that really was helpful that the foundation did was they, from the outset of their grants, had grants that you had to partner up with the scientists. So fortunately, very early in my academic career, I learned the benefit of building teams, of feeling comfortable with not being an expert in an area, but knowing how to work with other people who are experts in those areas to bring an idea from concept into translation. And that sort of gave me as a clinician this real purpose towards being able to take a clinical idea and make a difference in a patient life, which has become quite addictive actually. At the same time, as a female, I realized that there weren't many other colleagues around, so I applied for a scholarship and was successful in getting a scholarship by the Women in Leadership Australia, where I met many women from all across, not just medicine, all across different disciplines, and realised that this is a systemic problem. It's nothing new, but it is possible to make change, and we learned how important it is to support each other as well. And being supported by the RACS New South Wales Committee, I was able to to raise my voice along with other women at the time to make a lot of difference in areas that I was passionate about. And for me, from a personal point of view, it was really important. I have a young daughter. I don't want her growing up facing the same sort of difficulties in her professional life. It's another reason that drives me. So as a result, I have had the privilege of meeting so many amazing scientists and clinicians and working in large and extremely diverse teams. And the most rewarding aspect of that is being able to engage then with the kids and influencing particularly the female children and raising awareness about STEM and careers that they have opportunities to pursue. As an example of one research journey, I thought I would just use the theme of my PhD, which is 3D technologies, and particularly because what started off was winning the pitch in 2015, which then gave me pilot data to get a more substantial research grant from the Garner Pass and Rodney Williamson Memorial Foundation, and that's the clinical data from that we presented at the Innovation Symposium in 2017, then further again at the New South Wales Health Ministry's Innovation Symposium. We had some ministerial visits to the IAS. Whilst the clinical research was going in parallel, we were doing some basic science research in stem cells and bioprinting. We presented that last year at the Innovation Symposium here, and earlier this year we launched the RPA hospital as the first hospital to have a bioprinting laboratory in New South Wales. What's really important of having these technologies in clinical areas is that you develop new clinical needs, new teams, and we're certainly now working on forming, trying to develop new services for patients with head and neck cancer at Lifehouse who don't really have the option even or opportunity to address their hearing loss or address reconstructive options for their ears, and that's happening side by side alongside a research framework, which is really good. We've been able to translate that and form collaborations overseas. This particular project is we've collaborated with Korea and India, and as well as that, it's really great to then put on my college hat and be able to discuss the challenges that we face as surgical academics with other surgical academics and others who are there to support us to improve it so we can, we're more successful in translating our research. Some of those conversations are incredibly powerful. It's amazing what comes out when you get really engaged people in a room, such as a meeting I organised last year to discuss the TGA proposed rules for 3D printing, which was something we were facing in our research laboratories. And the conversations that came out of that, I decided, as put my PhD hat on, that I need to publish that in a paper, and we distributed that not just to the TGA, but of course to the New South Wales government. The New South Wales government's then taken that so much further, and they've set up an advisory committee to looking at 3D printing services, and it's so rewarding to see that the research that we're doing in our labs in the different hospitals alongside that, there's a bigger infrastructure looking at how do you scale that, where is the literature, how do you then translate that across as a health service, which is fantastic. Of course, in terms of advocacy, alongside that, really, open to the and encouraging young women, young medical students to pursue research and surgery as a profession. And I approached an honours student to take this up as a project, and this is Sarah McLean, whose picture was at the Sydney Morning Herald after she presented her honours project at the RACS ASC last year. But one of the things that was really confronting to me from her research was, she said, you know, we find that there's not a lot of female role models that are present in academia, that we don't really see the female surgeons in lectures and tutors and in leadership positions, so we feel that if you can't see, you can't be. In fact, it was a really funny stat. She said, I've looked at the discipline of surgery at Sydney Uni, and at that time, she said, there's more men named Michael than there are females who are academics. So we decided we needed to change that. So apart from encouraging other colleagues, other female colleagues who do a lot of teaching but don't feel that as an academic merit, to engage with the universities, to apply for titles. We've then engaged with the section of academic surgery and written to all the clinical deans across the universities in Australia to then approach these females who are giving up their time to teach and to do research, to then put themselves forward so they can be identified, and then we don't have, you know, the manuals that we have at our conferences. We can actually identify and represent them and showcase their research. So, you know, in that way, for developing a culture where females support other females, we have male champions for change. We want to change the perception of not just the profession for female surgeons, but also the community for female surgeons. And it's really important, at least, I mean, not just me, but everyone, a lot of my colleagues agree, that we don't just engage the medical students, but we start it a lot younger to engage the high school and even primary school students. So we've certainly had at the IAS kids come through, and it's really because when you look at the data in STEM jobs are going up, but the amount of women doing pursuing jobs in STEM is not going up, so it's really important to be engaging them early so they're aware that these options are available to them. So certainly for me, the journey of taking the road less travelled has led to some really rewarding experiences, and I'm really grateful to not just the people who've supported me, but also the people who've shut the door, because if hadn't they not done that and not challenged me, I wouldn't have looked at other doors to explore, which have been really rewarding. And the purpose for sharing this is not because I think this is an uncommon story. It's actually a very common story. And I think until we actually share these stories, especially in an environment which is really, really primed for supporting younger women coming through, that we're not going to be able to work together, that the next generation can get further and faster in their professional careers and really use to benefit the community to their full capacity. Thank you.